All right, what's up, guys? My name is Jackson Lohr. Welcome back to the Fitness for Life podcast. Today, I have with me Alex Shaw, who goes by Whiskey Weight Loss, is his training business. Alex has been training for almost 8 years now, and so we met at a conference a little over a year ago, and I asked him to come on, and he thankfully said yes. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Super excited to be here. I know, we've been connected for over a year or so. It's kind of cool to see each other's businesses grow, and I know we're going to have a great conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. So jumping right in, my goal for this is just to, both your audience and mine can get maybe just a little bit of, one takeaway that's helpful. But I think what would be helpful first is just to kind of understand your journey to getting to where you're at now. Talk to me a little bit about why and how you got into the very specific niche that you work with, and
Sure,
kind of
man. So
how that
I'm going
came
to do
about.
my best to condense about 15 years
Yeah,
into
yeah,
about
yeah.
150 seconds. So, like many trainers, I feel like my origin story. I was an overweight kid. Kind of taught myself the ways of the gym. Read Men's Health forever. When I got bored of reading Men's Health, then it was T Nation, if you remember that from like a decade ago. Then it was all right, cool. Like I've learned the blogs. Now let's go to college and let's go study exercise science. I did that. I went to college with the ambition of working with athletes. I feel like that's a lot of young
Yeah,
exercise science majors' dreams.
right.
And then I had a chance to do a study abroad year in Texas. I'm originally from England and got my study abroad opportunity in Texas and did an internship in strength and conditioning and hated it. It was terrible. The hours sucked. The
Yep.
people just weren't my people. And
Okay.
the future pay, not that money's everything, especially to a lot of people in the fitness industry, was awful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't technically think it's legal how like some of those people live. Um, but basically
Uh,
realized I was like, okay, cool. Let's not do the athlete thing.
yeah.
So let's go do personal fitness. I'd had a personal fitness journey. So why not go into helping other people achieve similar things and find their love of the gym and find their love of just, the healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
So after deciding to do that, got an internship at a well-known franchise, big box gym, but definitely on the nicer end of stuff. Think like a Lifetime Fitness or Equinox equivalent. That was where I started. I got very
Okay.
lucky. Did great there. Did that for a few years, and then when COVID happened and everyone in the commercial fitness industry got furloughed, basically, started day drinking like a lot of other people and didn't have anything to do. Made friends with my local liquor store manager, as you do, and basically just started, learning more about whiskey. Now, I'm
Okay.
from England. England doesn't have a rich whiskey heritage, but Scotland does. But I never drank whiskey back when I was in England. I really didn't. I was a cider drinker, a hard cider drinker. That's my hometown has more of that stuff. So I started getting into American whiskey. This was a very new thing. I liked the taste of it. There weren't many straight liquors that I enjoyed in college outside of the standard fireball shots and all that kind of thing. But I dived into this whiskey rabbit hole. It was really cool. I met a bunch of really good people, and while at the liquor store manager's house, I was shooting the breeze with a bunch of guys. It was like a Wednesday afternoon because no one had to go to work, and they were asking like, "Hey, Alex, what do you do for a living?" And I was like, "Well, I'm a personal trainer." And they were like, "But you drink a lot." And I was like, "Well, not a lot, but like more than your average trainer." And they were like, how does that work?" And I was like, I just had a blinking light bulb moment. In cartoons when you get a character and it's like ding, 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 and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, there's a problem here that's not being solved well.
Yeah.
Because you think of the typical weight loss programs or diets that are marketed to the average American, and it's no, give up alcohol, like that's the first thing, then give up carbs, and then finally give up all semblance of enjoyment in your life. And eventually you'll lose weight. And I was like, it doesn't have to be that way. So, my whole philosophy is based on you can lose weight and actually enjoy the diet, enjoy the process, and it can be fun because when you enjoy your diet. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. And you
Yeah.
don't look towards that end date.
Yeah.
So many people go on a diet with the sole intention of ending the diet, which is so ass backwards, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So then I had to, all right, how do I convey this message in my branding? And it was like, took me a little while, but boom, whiskey weight loss. And it so perfectly conveys this kind of like anti-diet sentiment, but still very much focusing on weight loss, right? Like big health improvements come with losing weight. And that was the perfect way for me to get that across in my branding and my messaging.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. So, talk me through when you're working with, your clients, how does that initial setup look like? Like, what do you take them through to be like, okay, this is and without revealing too much of your process, what does it look like for you to take somebody through that and establish those healthy habits? What are some of the first things you look at, while also, again, allowing them to enjoy it?
Absolutely. So I have no secrets.
Yeah.
I'm an open book when it comes to this stuff. I really am. So when it comes to like big picture philosophy stuff, I'm a big believer in the 90-10 rule.
Okay.
A lot of people will say the 80-20 rule, which I think is great for maintenance. I'm a believer that during weight loss, 90-10 is a really good thing, which is 90% of the time we eat enjoyable fuel.
Yep.
And then 10% of the time you eat or drink for fun.
Right.
And I think that applies to a lot of trainers. It's like for some people it's wine, for some people it's cake, for some people it's whiskey. And those are my people.
Yeah.
So when I work with clients, a lot of the time, especially early on, we'll kind of do like a nutrition auditing process where I'm like, hey, give me 2 weeks of food diary.
Yeah.
And then I can go through and it's like, hey, we can optimize this here. We can change this. We can swap this for this. I think this nutrition structure would work really well for your lifestyle and how you live, right? I've got some people who are, work from home, office, barely move from their desk. I've got other people who are realtors who never sit still and are always driving, right?
Yeah.
Very different scenarios, very different nutritional needs. So that's where the 90% comes in. It's how do we optimize for that while also making it fun? Like I'm a big believer in, hey, like don't eat salads all the time. That's really boring.
Yeah.
Instead, let's find a great way to do like burgers and French fries, but not, in a calorie efficient way. In a way that we've got good calorie to protein ratios. We're able to sneak fiber into it. Like there's lots of ways to make genuinely enjoyable food that also aligns with weight loss. So that's a lot of the start of it. Exercise is exercise. There's nothing whiskey specific.
Yeah.
We don't drink before working out. Bad idea.
So your clients don't go on any of those beer runs and just replace with whiskey?
Could they? Sure. Do I recommend it? No. They are great fun though. I don't know if you've done beer miles, but they're a good time. They really are a good time. But so that like a lot of the focus is on nutrition. We talk about being strategic when it comes to alcohol. So a lot of the time people ask me like, well, how much can I drink? And I'm like, that's a terrible way to look at it.
Yeah.
The way I look at alcohol is that there are certain social occasions, especially when you're into whiskey as a hobby, where alcohol adds value to the occasion.
Yeah.
Right? If you are going to a whiskey tasting, not drinking whiskey is going to kind of be a bummer.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a time where maybe you have more than one drink. Maybe it's 2, 3, 4, 7, depending on how long your whiskey tasting is. But you want to get that full, rich experience. Whereas sitting alone watching TV on a Tuesday, really terrible reason to have a drink.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm a big believer in, some people, can't do alcohol, and that's totally fine. They're just not the people I work with. Right? And I'll bump into people. Occasionally I'll do like professional networking events, and they're like, oh, whiskey weight loss, that's cool. I've been sober for 7 years. I'm like, cool. I'm really happy for you. We probably shouldn't work together. And that's totally fine. But, the people that they're like, oh, how much can I drink? And it's like, well, maybe 1 week it's 1 to 2 drinks. Maybe it's date night and you meet up with a buddy and, you grab coffee and maybe grab a drink afterwards. Other times it might be significantly more than that, right? I've got clients that go to whiskey festivals. They go to distilleries. Like I'm part of a local whiskey club and we chartered a bus, went up to a local distillery and drank for like 3 hours and then came home. That was definitely more than one drink.
Yeah.
But that's the 10%.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think a lot of it, you've just got to be really strategic about it. Like a very common refrain in fitness is everything in moderation. And I get the sentiment, but I also call bullshit. Because, like, if you truly mean it, everything in moderation, cool. So can we do like like cocaine in moderation?
Yeah.
It's like, no,
right.
let's not do that. Let's be strategic about this. So instead of everything in moderation, I'll say like, let's do strategic balance. And it really ties into this idea of like 90% of the time we eat for fun fuel, and then 10% of the time we just eat for fun.
Yeah.
And that really ties into it. And then in terms of my process, I'll tell anyone anything when it comes to, how this stuff works. There's no secrets. The reason my clients, keep me around is for implementation. It's not the what and the when and the why, it's the how for them specifically.
Right.
And then holding them to that accountability as well, which, every good trainer does.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think makes a big difference for my clients in my process is having a community of like-minded individuals. A lot of people aren't necessarily aware of this. There's a really cool whiskey subculture where there's a lot of bonding that goes on, and it's a lot of like, hey, have you had this whiskey? Have you had this whiskey? Let's meet up and let's, each bring a couple bottles and we'll go through and try it. And it's a great vessel for just communication and bonding. Nice. Which is really, really neat. So the way I do that inside of my process is we have a group chat, and sometimes we talk about whiskey, sometimes we talk about fitness, sometimes we complain about yard work. Like, it's just fun to be able to belong to a community like that.
Yeah.
And like, it's weight loss isn't magic, right? It's being strategic, it's enjoying the process, and it's being held accountable and having a community to lean on when times get tough.
Yeah.
I think those are the magic ingredients. And then what makes it great is that every trainer or coach has their unique spin on it, right? So mine is very obvious on my branding. Like, you have your own secret spin on it, and you and I have lots of mutual friends where it's like, this is their thing, right? Yeah. Whether it's over 40s, postpartum, prenatal, guys with low testosterone, like, there's a recipe for everyone. And the trick is just marrying the client's interests with the appropriate trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that's overlooked, is the connection piece to the person who's working with you. Right. Cause if I'm your coach and you can't stand talking to me, it's going to be a very short-lived relationship. And you're probably not going to be successful if that's the case, because you're going to have some sort of degree of rebellion towards whatever I say. So it's definitely good. I am very much of the mindset that the more of us there are, the better, because more people are going to connect with different people. We've connected with enough of our colleagues that we know we're very different people.
Yes, and that's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of going back a little bit, one of the things you said is there's a couple times is there's no secrets, right? I think it's funny just how much information we put out and give away.
Yeah.
Just because we know that, it doesn't diminish the value of having someone like us around. Is that if somebody can do it on their own and, has the like kind of built-in accountability or the discipline to do it on their own, they can take all the free stuff and go and run with it. And I love it, when I see that. And I actually had, I use an example here. I had a client who was only, this was a paying client for a few in-person sessions. It was like 3 or 4 that were spread out by like a week or 2 in between. And so, not a massive investment on their part, but just absolutely ate up all the information that I was giving them, and, was listening, taking notes, by the time we were finished with 4 sessions, she had a binder full of information that she had kind of pieced together through conversations we had had, emails we had sent, messages, that sort of thing. And she messages me 3 months later after having worked with me and is like, "Hey, I'm down 13 pounds. My blood glucose is better. Really appreciate all the education you did, to help me get started. All that." So I think, you really simplified it well, where it's strategic balance. I really like that, of can we find a point where we're balancing our enjoyment, and the things that we want to enjoy with the things that we know are responsible habits. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, that's the definitely the kicker for most people.
Yeah, for sure. And if someone's able to accomplish their goals on their own, then they absolutely should, because it's really empowering to be able to go and do that. And, there's going to, like, selfishly, from a business point of view for us, there's always going to be enough people who can't figure it out on their own, despite having all of the information.
Yeah.
That it's going to keep us in business for a really, really long time. So
Yeah.
that's why, if anyone's listening to this is ever wondering, like, oh, why did good trainers give away all the information for free? Because, like, we just want to put good out into the world.
Right.
And then there's going to be people that are like, I get it, I just need help.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that too. I mean, I think something that's very common in our space, right, as trainers, is like, we understand the fitness stuff and it's the business side of stuff that we need help with.
Yeah.
And it's like, could we go, read books and all of that? It's like, we could, but sometimes you just, give someone a credit card and a few $1,000s later, you're like, cool, I upgraded my business skill set and now I can reach more people through my messaging, through my branding. And because we're able to communicate what we do and who we are clearer, people are more bought into who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a really cool way to be able to make a living. I think there's very few jobs in the world that beat coaching, specifically weight loss coaching. It's a cool impact.
Yeah. And you talk about, impact is a great word for it. And talking about wanting to help people, like, that's what we're here for. And I absolutely love, messages like I was just talking about, getting a message 3 months later from someone I had not written off, but just was like, oh, they're doing their own thing. Cool.
Yeah.
Getting a message from them that they're having success is awesome. And getting messages from people, I've had messages from people that even just the free stuff they take on their own and go and message me back and like, hey, I'm healthier now than I was before I started listening to your stuff. Great. We love that. Because that's the goal, right? We know that, and I think we were both impacted by Nick's speech a year plus ago, where he said, the world is dying, right? Basically led with that on the conference that we met each other at. And to me, that fired me up. I'm like, okay, we are really getting into it right off the bat. Because
dude, it's pretty wild because, we can get caught up in our own bubble, I think, surrounded by other people in the fitness industry, and it's tough. And I've been really on an in-person networking bug. I have an online business, but I love in-person networking, getting to work with other business professionals. And you kind of going through that for me has really enabled me to see, like, oh, like, this person really knows their stuff when it comes to mortgages, marketing, residential realtor, like all of these individual professions. And they're like, oh, like, weight loss is about calories?
Yeah.
And it's just cool to be able to see, like, oh, they really know their stuff here, but they don't have a clue when it comes to this stuff. And not that they, should, because the education system, both in America and where I'm from in England, is like, it's not good.
Yeah.
So you rely on trying to dissect this massive amount of information that is in the world. Some of it is good, some of it's okay, and some of it's just downright lies and manipulation to try and get people to, part with money.
Yeah.
And it's the unfortunate world that we kind of live in. By the way, I did want to circle back one more time on the alcohol side of things. So just to give listeners a little bit more tactical stuff. So when it comes to alcohol, you've got the balance part of it. That's obviously a big one. I think one of the things that a lot of people are familiar with is like I've had a few drinks and now I want the munchie, or I've got the munchies and I want all of the food.
Yeah.
So there's that element to it. And there's not a whole lot you can do about that other than drink less and don't have certain stuff inside the house that drunk you is really going to want to eat all of later.
Yeah.
So there's an element of, I call it like environmental design, which I think a lot of trainers focus on. It's right. Okay, like, it's not to say you can't have ice cream, just don't keep ice cream in the house. And if you really want it, go and drive and get it.
Yeah.
But chances are it's enough of a barrier for you to realize that you don't actually really want ice cream, you're just bored.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an element of it. I think something that people don't realize with alcohol is that obviously you have, like, some people get hangovers, like, psychologically speaking, you always have a physiological hangover. So even if you don't get hangovers, I'm using air quotes for people who are listening, there is a physiological hangover there that you can't really escape.
Yeah.
And when that happens, your activity level, the fancy term for it is NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, but basically like how active you are, how many steps you take, almost always takes a dive the day after, more than a couple drinks. Also, what happens is the part of your brain that seeks out like high fat, high salt, high carb foods is a little bit more hungry, right? Instead, when you go to the office and normally you walk past the donuts in the break room, the day after a hangover, that's going to feel like a really long 10 feet. And before you realize it, you're like, and one donut. Oh, that was really good. 2 donuts. I've had 2. I may as well have 3 donuts.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not just the day of, it's also the day after.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware of that and pre-planning to take that into account, it will, like, there's a reason people tell you to give up drinking when you're trying to lose weight. It's not a helpful beverage.
Yeah.
But when you are able to be strategic about it and have strategic balance, you can, make the best of a not so great situation. So yeah, just wanted to share that with the listeners.
No, that's super helpful. And I talk about the environmental, you mentioned the environmental stuff. That's kind of framing yourself in a good light where if you have a vice, don't have it near you, like if you have something, you're like, okay, this is my favorite snack and I spend 400 calories on it. If I'm going to snack, might be good to keep that at least shut away somewhere where you have to make an effort to go get it. Right. That's kind of the first step. And then as you said, if you can't resist it regularly, get it out.
Absolutely. I actually have a great story if you don't mind me sharing.
Please. Yeah, go for it.
So, like I said, I'm from England. My parents will come visit me probably every other year or so. And my dad was like, hey, what do you want me to bring you? Right? Because there's certain foods you get in England, hard to find over here. And I was like, bring me 1 bar of Galaxy chocolate. And you can find it over here, but it was something nice that he could bring. And I was like, favorite kind of chocolate. Well, instead of 1 bar, he bought 36 family-size bars in a catering box. And I was like, thanks, Dad. Love you. Oh, God. So I put it in the pantry like a dumbass. And every time I open the pantry door, I'm like at eye level. Like, you think trainers know what we're doing. We fall prey to exactly the same things.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like at eye level. I was eating one of these a day. They're like 650 calories, right? That you don't anticipate on consuming.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, when you've had a long day and you're like, oh, go to the pantry, chocolate. And like, I've got a fairly consumptive personality. Like, I can't stop at 1 square of chocolate. Like, the whole thing goes.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Like, I got through like half the box before I like started coaching myself, and I'm like, you can figure this out. So all I did, Jackson, was I took the box, put it above the fridge. You could still see it, but it was above eye level, so you didn't see it all the time.
Yep.
And I went from 1 bar a day to, I think the rest of the box lasted like 9 months.
Nice. Yeah.
One simple thing.
Right.
one teeny tiny. The box moved a total of about 7 feet and maybe 2 feet in elevation. It was
Yeah.
not a big shift.
Yeah.
And it was still like we didn't have a cupboard over the fridge. It was just
Yeah.
on the fridge,
Hmm.
but you couldn't see it, and that
Right.
was enough.
Yeah.
And that was enough. And it just goes to show the power of environmental design. And I think until you've like seen it in action, a lot of people underestimate the power of it.
Yeah.
And it really is like kind of magical.
Right. Because, you know, just to break down the numbers for you, if you were in a maintenance phase before that and you were eating a bar a day, you would have been putting on like more than
Oh,
a
yeah.
pound a week.
Yeah, it was not good. It was not
yeah.
good.
So that puts you in a tight spot there. If you don't do something quickly. So that's, again, a massive change, even though it was so small. Like a massive change to what it does to your health, and the ability for you to maintain that kind of that kind of step. And I think that's a great example of where someone we love wants to do something kind for us.
Yep.
That, you know, we ask for one thing and they go above and beyond. That is very kind, very thoughtful. But in terms of that person, of the health of it, it's like, that, you know, I have so many clients who run into, oh, well, you know, my in-laws made this food for me, or, you know, or my, you know, I was staying with my sister, or, you know, whatever it is. Usually it's a family member who means well, who's just trying to care. You know, food is one of the ways that they care for people. Again, offering someone a drink is very similar in that, for a lot of people, a lot of cultures as well. And you know, that's definitely something that can be the most well-meaning of intentions, but if taken too far, can just really blow up someone's plans.
It can, and I think there's a two-pronged approach to solving that problem. One is, you know, doing kind of what I did, right, designing the environment around it.
Yeah.
And the other one is going back to that 90-10 philosophy I mentioned earlier. When your 90% is really on top of things,
yeah,
you have more flexibility when it comes to that 10%.
Absolutely.
And if it's closer to 70-30, basically any deviation from the norm sets you back.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm a fan of 90-10, not 80-20, because when you have something like that, it pushes you from 90-10 to 80-20. Yeah. And we know that most people can maintain on like an 80-20 lifestyle. But if you're 80-20 all the time, then you're kind of screwed, because anything worse than that pushes you into the danger zone. Yeah. So, and it's the other thing too, and this goes more into like deep coaching with clients, it's, does it make you a bad person if you don't finish the thing they brought you?
Right.
Now, the chocolate was a bit different because it's technically non-perishable. So, like, you know, I'm human. But let's say it's a cake, right? Yeah. The cake has a shelf life. After 2 weeks, don't eat the cake.
Right.
So it's like, can you space it out to the point where the cake probably goes bad? Because people have a weird thing about throwing away food.
Yeah.
Right. They have a really weird thing about throwing away food. I grew up on like a finish your plate kind of family. Yep. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe I wouldn't encourage it on my kids, but you know, it's a case of, okay, well, can I not finish this entire thing to the point where I don't feel bad about throwing it out because it's the logical thing to do? Something like that. And if it's non-perishable, if it's something that, like the chocolate, you either space it out for a very long period of time by designing your environment so that you don't notice it, or can you give it away to someone else? Is there someone else you can give it away to? If it's non-perishable, can you take it to a food bank?
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's a great one. Something that people don't often think about.
Right.
But it's a way to feel good about not eating the thing that someone gave you for you. It's like, I've had my piece. I'm going to go share it with someone who needs more.
Yeah.
And it's a great way, like, mind games is a big part of weight loss, right? Once you get past the initial, I call it like hard knowledge, like calories,
Right.
protein, fiber,
Yeah.
how different food affects hunger. Like, once you know that stuff, then it's just fighting the little demon on your shoulder that's going, hey, that donut looks really good.
Yeah.
And that's where that deep coaching really comes in.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why we're cool with giving away the hard knowledge secrets, because there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Well, and that's where it gets, and this is what I tell everybody. Everybody's different. Everybody's got something different going on. And I do want to ask you a question about this here in a second, but everybody grew up differently with different cultural influences, with different, familial influences, with how they see food, how they view exercise, how they, what they were taught. And I think a lot of times people, and even for me personally, how I was viewed by my peers growing up. So I'm kind of, you mentioned being a little bit chubbier as a kid. I was the opposite. I was, stick thin. And so my journey with my weight has been, how much can I gain? And so it's a very different approach. I was going to, before we hop off here in a few minutes, I was going to ask, like, how has your experience with, losing weight or with becoming, improving your fitness, not necessarily losing weight, but improving your fitness, impacted you and made you, better able to connect with your clients?
Yeah, I think it's being able to empathize from a place of I've been there, I know how that feels.
Yeah.
Right? When someone says I hate how my belly hangs over my belt, I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
Because, side note, in British school we finish at 16, high school at 16,
Yeah.
and then from 16 through 18 we either go to trade school or we go to like academic finishing school, for lack of a better term. And during academic finishing school we had to wear full suits, so I know what that feels like. And it's just, you're able to go, yeah, dude, I totally get it. Like, I understand that. And being able to deeply empathize so that you can then coach from a place of understanding, not a place of pure instruction. Right? Instruction has its place.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
People need to feel listened to before they will listen.
Yeah.
And it's been really beneficial. And also it's, pretty much all of my clients are weight loss, right? So being able to live what I preach goes a long way into being able to say, I can say with certainty, when you do this, this, and this will happen.
Yeah.
I know because I've lived it.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way to getting that kind of like buy-in, right? You mentioned earlier about how if you don't like your coach, you probably won't do what they say.
Yeah.
Well, you also have to believe them too. You have to like them and you have to believe them.
Yeah.
And if, as a coach, if I don't have conviction behind what I'm saying, people can tell. Right? If you're just making stuff up, people can sense that. They really can. So, for me, it was, I didn't know anything about nutrition, fitness growing up, being an overweight kid. And it was literally, I taught myself the hard knowledge.
Yeah.
And then it's been a case of over years and years of, having that little fat kid on my shoulder being like, finish the entire pizza. And sometimes I listen to the little fat kid and I eat the entire pizza. But the important part is how you come back from that.
Yeah.
And how often are you listening to the person on your shoulder?
Yeah.
And it's just been for me, I wouldn't change a thing. It's fitness has been massive for me in terms of who I am and how I do things and how I make a living. It's been able to facilitate all of that. But yeah, I kind of went on a little side tangent there, but it's been everything, man. It's been everything from a personal and a professional point of view.
Yeah, cool. Well, Alex, I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on and just giving some thoughtful, very detailed answers to the questions I've asked, and really giving a lot of helpful information that anyone listening can take away multiple things from this conversation. So I'm really pleased with that. But if people are looking for specifically whiskey weight loss, where can they find you, man?
Sure, man. I'm really in two places. You can find my website, whiskeyweightloss.com. that will, have information there. Or if you want to follow me on socials, I pretty much only exist on Facebook. I think I have an Instagram. It is not very active. I
Yeah.
just figured out like Facebook is where I'm happy. So if
I'm
you
the same.
go
Yeah.
to facebook.com/whiskey weight loss, it will take you to my personal profile. That's where I post somewhere between 4 to 6 times a week.
Nice.
And that's where I get all my thoughts out into the world.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Alex, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you.